Weekend afternoon. Daniel Cole, a 38-year-old single father, held his 7-year-old daughter's hand as they walked through the supermarket. He reached for a carton of milk when a familiar voice spoke behind him. "Excuse me, could you grab that milk on the top shelf for me?" He turned around and froze. Isabella Reed, his ex-girlfriend, the woman he hadn't seen in 8 years, standing right there, 3 feet away. She looked at him. Her breath caught. Her eyes went wide. Before the air could get heavier, before either of them could speak, his daughter looked up with innocent curiosity. "Daddy, is this lady my mommy?" The supermarket went completely silent. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. Daniel couldn't find his voice. Daniel Cole, 38 years old, single father, electronics engineer. His wife passed away 5 years ago. Lily, 7 years old, his daughter, sweet, curious, loved puzzles and asking questions that pierce straight to the heart. Isabella Reed, 34 years old, architect, Daniel's first love, the woman who left him when they were young because she chose her career over him. Daniel lived in Boston, worked during the day, came home evenings to cook dinner and help with homework. His life revolved around Lily. He didn't date, didn't socialize much beyond parent-teacher meetings and neighborhood gatherings. When friends asked why he stayed single, he always said the same thing. "I loved someone once. Maybe that's all I get in one lifetime." Lily asked about her mother often. "Daddy, does Mommy still remember me?" "Mommy is in a warm, beautiful place, but Daddy is still here, so you're never alone." Last Christmas, Lily wrote a letter to Santa. Daniel found it tucked under her pillow. "Dear Santa, I don't want toys. I just wish for a woman who smiles when she goes shopping with Daddy." He read it and smiled sadly. "My daughter is too romantic for her own good." 1 week later, they went to the supermarket for groceries, their Saturday routine. Lily pushed the small cart while Daniel checked the list on his phone. They stopped in the dairy aisle. Daniel bent down to grab milk from the lower shelf when that voice came from behind him, a voice he'd heard 1,000 times in his dreams, a voice he thought he'd never hear again in real life. "Excuse me, could you grab that milk on the top shelf for me?" He stood slowly, turned around, and there she was, Isabella Reed, the girl who'd made him believe in forever, the girl who'd disappeared without goodbye 8 years ago. Time stopped. She looked almost the same, a little older, more refined. Her hair was shorter. But those eyes, those same brown eyes that used to look at him like he was her whole world. "Daniel," her voice trembled. "Isabella." Neither of them moved. The supermarket continued around them. Other shoppers passed by, but they were frozen in their own bubble of shock and memory. You look well," she managed. "So do you." Awkward silence stretched between them. Then Lily tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, who is this pretty lady?" Daniel blinked, coming back to reality. "This is an old friend." "A friend?" Lily studied Isabella with intense curiosity. "Do you know how to cook?" Isabella let out a surprised laugh through the tears gathering in her eyes. Yes, a little." "Can you make pancakes?" "Lily," Daniel said gently, "don't bother her with random questions." "I'm not random. I just want to find someone who can cook with Daddy." The simple innocence of it broke something in both adults. Isabella knelt down to Lily's level. "Your daddy was always the better cook between us." "Really? Did you eat his food before?" "Many times, a long time ago." Lily's eyes went wide with realization. "Were you Daddy's girlfriend?" Daniel and Isabella exchanged a loaded glance. "Yes," Isabella said softly. "I was. Once." "Then why aren't you anymore?" The question hung in the air, heavy, painful. Daniel cleared his throat. "Lily, sometimes adults, it's complicated. That's what grown-ups always say when they don't want to explain," Lily said matter-of-factly. Isabella smiled through her tears. "You're a smart girl." "My daddy says I'm too smart for my own good." "He's right." Daniel grabbed their milk. "We should go. Let you finish your shopping." "Wait," Isabella said quickly, then stopped, unsure what to say next. Lily saved the moment. She pulled out a crayon drawing from her coat pocket. "Here, I drew this at school. It's a house with 3 people. You can have it. Isabella took the drawing with shaking hands. In a child's messy crayon strokes, there was indeed a house, and 3 stick figures holding hands. Thank you, she whispered. It's beautiful. As they walked away, Lily looked back and waved. Isabella waved back, tears streaming down her face. At the checkout counter, Lily asked, Daddy, why was that pretty lady crying? Sometimes people cry when they remember things that made them happy a long time ago. Was she happy with you? Daniel's chest tightened. I think so. Once. A cashier named Maria later recalled, I saw that woman standing in the aisle long after they left, just holding that child's drawing. When the little girl turned and waved goodbye, the woman covered her mouth and cried. I've never seen someone look so heartbroken in a supermarket before. 1 week later, Daniel received an email. The community center where Lily took art classes was being renovated. The architect would be visiting to finalize plans. He didn't think much of it until he dropped Lily off for class and saw Isabella standing in the center's hallway, looking at blueprints. She looked up. Their eyes met again. Daniel. Isabella. Lily ran over excitedly. It's the milk lady. Isabella laughed despite herself. Milk lady? Is that what you call me? Well, we met you at the milk section. Fair point. The center director explained that Isabella had been hired to redesign the building. She'd be around for the next several weeks overseeing the project. Destiny has a strange sense of humor, Isabella said quietly to Daniel. Always has. Over the next few weeks, Isabella came by during Lily's art class. She'd stay afterward, watching the children paint, sometimes offering advice on perspective and color. Lily gravitated toward her naturally. They'd sit together, drawing buildings and cities while Daniel waited in the doorway. He watched them together and felt something shift in his chest. Something he'd kept locked away for 8 years. One evening after class, Lily insisted Isabella join them for ice cream at the shop next door. They sat at a small table, Lily between them, chattering about her drawings while the adults remained mostly silent. Finally, when Lily ran to look at the candy display, Isabella spoke. Does she know about me? No. She knows I dated before I met her mother, but I never told her your name. And her mother? Sarah. She died in a car accident 4 years ago. Drunk driver ran a red light. Isabella's hand flew to her mouth. Oh God, Daniel, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Were you happy? Daniel thought about it. She was kind, patient. She loved Lily completely, and I cared for her deeply. But? He looked directly at Isabella. But I never stopped comparing every sunrise to the one I watched with you. Tears slid down her cheeks. That's not fair to her memory. I know, which is why I never said it out loud. Until now. Lily came running back with a request for gummy bears. The serious moment passed. But as they walked out, Isabella's hand brushed Daniel's. Just for a second. And that brief touch carried 8 years of unspoken words. That night, Lily asked the question Daniel had been dreading. Daddy, could the milk lady be my new mommy? He sat on her bed, choosing his words carefully. Why would you ask that? Because she looks at you the way people look at each other in movies. Like she's remembering something really important. Grown-ups don't work like movies, sweetheart. But Christmas is about miracles, right? And you told me miracles happen when we believe in them. Daniel kissed her forehead. Go to sleep, baby. But he couldn't sleep. He lay awake thinking about Isabella's smile, about the way she'd laughed at Lily's jokes, about all the years they'd lost. The next day, he found an excuse to stop by the community center during his lunch break. Isabella was there, measuring walls, making notes. Do you need something? She asked. I wanted to talk, if you have time. They went outside to the small garden behind the building. I need to ask you something, Daniel said. And I need the truth. Okay. Why did you leave? 8 years ago. No goodbye, no explanation. Just gone. Isabella closed her eyes. I was scared. Of what? Of being too happy, of needing you too much, of building a life and then losing it. So you left first. Yes. I thought it would hurt less if I was the one who chose to go. Did it? She shook her head. It destroyed me. Every day for 3 years I wanted to come back. But I thought you'd hate me, and you'd have every right to. I did hate you, for a while. But then Sarah came along and I tried to move forward, tried to build something new. I'm glad you found happiness. I found contentment. That's different from happiness. They stood in silence, the weight of lost time heavy between them. A teacher at the center named Mrs. Chen later said, I watched them sitting together while the little girl drew pictures. The way they looked at each other, you could see years of love and regret in those glances. They didn't need words. Their eyes said everything. 2 weeks later, Daniel got an emergency call. Electrical fire at the community center. Minor damage, but the whole system needed inspection before they could reopen. He arrived with his equipment and found Isabella there, coordinating with the fire department. You still work this late? He asked. Have to. Grand opening is in 3 weeks. He smiled. You haven't changed. Still stubborn. She turned away. And you're still too gentle. Still the kind of person that makes others want to stay. As he checked the electrical panel, the lights flickered. Isabella stumbled on some loose cables. Daniel caught her. They were suddenly very close, face to face, breathing the same air. Daniel, she whispered, I need to tell you something. The real reason I left. I'm listening. I was diagnosed with cancer, stage 3, 8 years ago, right before I was supposed to move in with you. Daniel's world tilted. The doctors said my chances weren't good. Aggressive treatment, uncertain outcome. And I thought, her voice broke, I thought if I was going to die, I didn't want you to watch it happen. I didn't want you to spend years taking care of me, watching me fade away, sacrificing your dreams for someone who might not survive. So you just left. I sent you that brief email saying I was taking a job overseas. Then I went through treatment alone. 3 years of chemo, surgery, recovery, and when I finally went into remission, when I finally felt strong enough to come back, I found out you got married. Daniel stared at her, processing. You went through cancer alone because you thought you were protecting me? Yes. Isabella, that was the stupidest, most heartbreaking thing you could have done. I know. If you'd told me, I would have been there. Not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because I loved you. Because watching someone fight for their life doesn't make you love them less. It makes you love them more. She sobbed. I was so scared, Daniel. So scared of becoming a burden, of taking your youth, your future, and leaving you with nothing but grief. Instead, you left me with 8 years of wondering what I did wrong. 8 years of thinking I wasn't enough to make you stay. You were always enough. You were everything. That's why I had to go. He pulled her close. That logic is insane. I know, but I was 26 and terrified, and I made the worst decision of my life. They held each other in the darkened community center, surrounded by burnt wires and broken dreams and the weight of time lost. Lily's voice suddenly broke through. Hello? Daddy? Are you in here? They pulled apart quickly. Lily appeared around the corner with Mrs. Chen. Mrs. Chen said there was a fire. Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. Just checking the damage. Lily looked between Daniel and Isabella, at their tear-streaked faces, at the way they stood so close. With the emotional intelligence that only children possess, she walked over and took both their hands. You love each other, don't you? Both adults froze. Lily, Daniel started. It's okay, Daddy. I heard you talking. I didn't mean to listen, but the door was open. She looked up at Isabella. My mommy used to say something before she died. She said, love that goes unspoken is like a Christmas present that never gets opened. Isabella knelt down. Your mommy sounds like she was very wise. She was, and she told Daddy that if he ever found someone who made him smile again, he should hold on tight. She said that? Lily nodded seriously. The night before she died, she made Daddy promise. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Baby, you never told me that. Because you weren't ready to hear it. But now I think you are. The three of them stood in the damaged building, surrounded by burnt-out lights and smoke-stained walls. And somehow, in that broken place, something began to heal. A construction worker named Tom was outside during this moment. He later said, "I saw them through the window, the man holding the woman while a little girl held both their hands. No music, no fanfare, just three people finding their way back to each other. It looked like the ending of a movie, except it was real." Over the next month, things changed slowly. Isabella came to dinner twice a week. She'd bring takeout or ingredients, and they'd cook together while Lily did homework at the kitchen table. It felt natural, easy, like no time had passed at all. Lily started calling her Aunt Bella without being prompted. Isabella loved it. One evening, as they decorated Christmas cookies, Lily asked, "Aunt Bella, did you love my daddy before he met my mommy?" Isabella looked at Daniel, who nodded slightly. Permission to be honest. "Yes, sweetheart, I loved him very much. And now? Now, I'm learning that some kinds of love don't go away. They just wait. For what? For the right moment to bloom again." Daniel watched them sprinkle sugar on cookies, and something in his chest loosened. The tight knot of grief and loneliness that had lived there for years began to unravel. The following week, Isabella invited them to see her latest project, a small library she'd designed for the neighborhood. It was her first independent project since coming back to Boston. "This is beautiful," Daniel said, walking through the space. "High ceilings, natural light, cozy reading nooks. I designed it thinking about families like yours, places where fathers can bring their daughters to read together, where people feel safe and welcomed." Lily ran her hands along the built-in bookshelves. "It's like a castle made of books." Isabella knelt beside her. "Want to know a secret? When I was designing this, I imagined a little girl just like you sitting here, reading fairy tales." "Really? Really, you inspired me. Both of you did." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Isabella." She stood and faced him. "I know I don't have the right to ask this, but I need you to know something. These past few weeks being with you and Lily, it's reminded me what home feels like. And I realize now that I spent 8 years running from the only place I ever wanted to be." "You're not running anymore." "No, I'm done running. I'm ready to stay, if you'll let me." Lily, with perfect timing, grabbed both their hands. "Does this mean Aunt Bella is staying forever?" Daniel and Isabella looked at each other. Something unspoken passed between them. An understanding. A promise. "I think it might," Daniel said softly. That weekend, they went back to the supermarket together. Not because they needed groceries, but because Lily insisted. "We have to see if the milk aisle feels different now," she explained with 7-year-old logic that made no sense and perfect sense at the same time. They stood in the dairy section, the three of them, and Lily announced, "Yep, it feels different. It feels like family." A woman shopping nearby smiled at them. "Your daughter is precious." Before Daniel could correct her, Isabella said, "Thank you. We think so too." "Shana." The woman walked away and Lily beamed. "She thought we were all family." "We are family," Isabella said, surprising herself with how easily the words came. Maybe not in the traditional way yet, but we're getting there. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel and Isabella sat on the porch with coffee. Snow began to fall, soft, gentle. The streetlights caught the flakes and made them sparkle. "Can I ask you something?" Isabella said. "Always. Do you think Sarah would be okay with this? With us?" Daniel thought about his late wife, about their last conversation, about the promise she'd made him make. "Yes, she would. In fact, she'd probably be annoyed it took us this long to figure it out." Isabella laughed. "She sounds like she was wonderful." "She was, and I'll always love her memory. But she's gone, and you're here, and I'm learning that it's possible to honor someone's memory while still choosing to live." "Ha, is that what this is? Choosing to live?" He turned to look at her fully. "It's choosing to try. I don't know where this goes. I don't know if we can fix what broke 8 years ago, but I'm willing to find out." "Are you?" "More than anything." He reached over and took her hand. She squeezed back, and this time, she didn't let go. "I was so scared," she admitted quietly. "When I saw you in that supermarket, I thought you'd hate me. that you'd tell me to leave, that too much time had passed. I did hate you, for a while, but Lily taught me something important. What's that? That grudges are heavy, and life is too short to carry heavy things when you could be holding hands instead. Isabella rested her head on his shoulder. When did you become so wise? When I became a single father and realized I didn't have energy for anything that didn't matter. And you, Isabella Reed, you've always mattered, even when I tried to pretend you didn't. They sat like that for a long time, watching snow fall on the quiet street, holding hands like teenagers, feeling tentatively hopeful for the first time in years. Inside, Lily peeked through the window and smiled. She pulled out her journal and wrote, "Dear Diary, I think my Christmas wish is coming true. Daddy is smiling again, and Aunt Bella looks at us like we're her home. Maybe Santa does read letters after all." Then she ran back to bed, her heart full, her Christmas wish slowly blooming into reality. From today forward, I choose to look at people a little longer than a heartbeat. I will live kindly. 1 year later. Christmas had returned to Daniel's house in full force. Lights strung across the porch, a wreath on the door, stockings hanging by the fireplace. 3 stockings. Isabella had moved in 6 months ago. Not as a girlfriend, not even as a fiancée yet, but as someone who belonged, who fit into their small family like she'd always been there. The community center project had finished. Isabella now worked from a home office, taking projects that let her stay close. That Christmas Eve, the 3 of them volunteered at the same supermarket where they'd first reunited. The store hosted a toy drive for underprivileged children. Lily handed out candy canes. Isabella organized donations. Daniel helped carry boxes. A local news crew showed up to cover the event. "So," the reporter asked, "how did you 3 become a family?" Daniel and Isabella exchanged a smile. "It started with a question," Daniel said. "In the dairy aisle of this very store. My daughter asked her future mother if she was, in fact, her mother. Before any of us were ready for that question, Lily popped into frame grinning. I just wanted to know. Adults are so slow about things." Everyone laughed. The reporter turned to Isabella. "And what made you come back into their lives?" "I never really left," Isabella said, her hand finding Daniel's. "I was just lost for a while. But something about this man, he's a lighthouse. Even when you drift far away, his light guides you back home." Later, after the event, they walked through the supermarket just for nostalgia. They stopped in the dairy aisle, the same spot where everything had started. "Remember?" Lily asked. "This is where I asked if Aunt Bella was my mommy." "I remember," Daniel said. "I thought my heart was going to stop." "I was so embarrassed," Isabella added, "but also hopeful, even then." Lily looked at both of them seriously. "Well, I have another question now." "What's that, sweetheart?" "When are you 2 getting married? Because I want to be the flower girl, and I need time to practice walking in fancy shoes." Daniel and Isabella burst out laughing. "Is that a proposal by proxy?" Isabella teased. "I mean," Daniel said, pulling a small box from his pocket, "I was planning to wait until we got home. But since Lily brought it up," he knelt down right there, in the dairy aisle, where it all began. "Isabella Reed, we lost 8 years. I don't want to lose any more time. Will you marry me?" Isabella covered her mouth, tears streaming. "Yes, God, yes, 1,000 times yes." Lily cheered. Other shoppers who'd noticed started clapping. The same cashier from a year ago, Maria, watched from her register and cried happy tears. That night, the 3 of them made hot chocolate and sat by the Christmas tree. Lily nestled between them on the couch. "I'm glad my Christmas wish came true." "What wish?" Isabella asked. "Last year I wrote to Santa. I wished for someone who would smile when she went shopping with Daddy, and you smile all the time now." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "You know what, kiddo? You're a better matchmaker than Santa." "I know," Lily said matter-of-factly. "That's why I'm going to be a professional question asker when I grow up." They laughed together. A family stitched back together by fate, timing, and a child's innocent curiosity. A photo of them in the dairy aisle, Daniel on one knee, Isabella crying happy tears, Lily jumping with joy. went viral online. The caption read, "Sometimes Christmas miracles don't come from the North Pole. Sometimes they come from the dairy aisle, when a child reminds adults what love really means." If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten, because sometimes the person you lost is just waiting in the dairy aisle for a second chance. And sometimes a child's innocent question is exactly what two broken hearts need to heal. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing. Thank you for choosing love.